Welcome to Mr. Biz Radio, biz talk for biz owners. If you're ready to stop faking the funk and take your business onward and upward, this show is for you. And now, here's Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth.
All right, welcome back to Mr. Biz Radio. Great week this week. Looking forward to talking. I met our guest this week a few months ago, and he, right off the bat, I was intrigued because he had written a book, actually, not just researched it, on something that was something I get made fun of by a lot of my buddies, and you'll see why here in a minute. But it's very intriguing, and I'm very much looking forward to this. I know you're going to get something out of this, whether you want to listen for business reasons, whether you want to have there's some entertainment in this. I mean, it's good stuff. Today we are digging into leadership from a totally different angle. My guest, Mr. Steve Williams, is the author of Notorious Leadership Lessons from History's Most Notorious Leaders, where he pulls powerful, sometimes uncomfortable leadership lessons from history's most infamous figures. We're going to explore what business owners can learn from leaders who ruled through fear, charisma, strategy, and controversy, and how to separate effective leadership traits from destructive ones. So buckle up. This one's going to be a good one. Steve, welcome to Mr. Biz Radio.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah. So like I said, a little bit of more color around what I said at the outset is there's a couple of different Netflix specials on like drug cartel leaders, like the Pablo Escobars of the world. And I've watched them multiple times. And a lot of my friends will make fun of me. They're like, why do you watch that? I'm like, these guys built these giant business empires on the illegal side of things. Like, imagine if you apply some of the business principles, the leadership principles they had to a legit business, how successful it would be. And that's why when I met Steve, I'm like, oh my gosh, Steve, you're my guy. You got to come on and we got to talk through this. But before we get into that, you've got a fascinating history which leads up to what you're doing now in the book. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneur journey, if you would, Steve.
Sure, absolutely. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad had founded a manufacturing company, and that was my first introduction into business. And I was there working after school and before I was old enough to work there full time. And that's how I got in the business, the industry, the electronics manufacturing, which I'm still in as a consultant. So 2026 will mark 50 years in the business.
Oh,
so
wow.
I spent my first 22 years in the manufacturing sector, actually running companies that built stuff. And then I went to work for one of my largest customers, and I was tasked with putting together a team that would develop a global supply chain that would support this company's growth. When I started, they were about 350 million. When I left, they were closing in on 3 billion, and they'll do over 4 billion this year. So my team got to go out all over the world and analyze and qualify and manage and see world-class manufacturing companies in all niches of custom, product, and bring that technology back and kind of, do supplier development and kind of trade best practices. And we learned firsthand from all these companies what worked really well and what didn't work. And that was a great learning experience for me that would translate later into, I was there 15 years as a global sourcing manager, and I determined after experiencing literally 1,000 of these companies and working with the management and the owners and getting intimate into their processes, that a lot of them were really good at what they did, but there was a lot of them that really weren't and could use some help. And so I started this company. This will be my 13th year, helping companies improve their business processes, which includes leadership, which I added on. About a decade ago, I became a John Maxwell certified leadership consultant. So that's kind of how I got into that part of the business. It's kind of a split between, best practices, lean manufacturing, quality systems, and then leadership development on the other side of the business.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating stuff. And so that's the other thing that I didn't know when I first talked to you, your extensive history of this. And then, so that leads me on my initial question here. What led you to study some of those, notorious leaders as opposed to all the, the great leaders that sort of everyone else writes about?
Oh, Mr. Biz, it was really quite by accident. I was traveling a lot in the last job I had before I created this company. I go to Asia a couple of times a year. I travel all over the world looking at these companies, and I'm based out of Milwaukee, in the Milwaukee, suburbs. So I
Hmm.
fly out of Mitchell Field, and there's a little bookstore in there that sells these really old books. And I normally would bring a book back then before, iPads and stuff to
Hmm.
read on a book. And I went into this bookstore and I went to the history section and I found a book by a guy named Wes Roberts that wrote a book called Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun. And I thought, that sounds really interesting. So I bought it and I read it on the trip. And that was like 20 years ago. I really didn't do anything with it. I kept it in the back of my mind. This is my sixth book. I write about business. I'm not creative or smart enough to write, not fiction books. So I write about what I know, business. So
Hmm.
when I was looking for another topic, I remember that book. It's still on my bookshelf, and I pulled it out and I said, you know what? If we can learn positive leadership lessons from this one notorious leader, there's got to be other ones out there that we can learn something from. So that's kind of the genesis of the book. And I began researching people. I wanted to cover a period of about 2,500 years. I wanted them all to have, examples where, they could teach us a lesson and how they applied the lesson. And then I also included a lesson from my leadership journey at that particular lesson where I either did a really good job and succeeded or I failed. And my intent of the book was for people to learn from both my successes and failures along with all the other, 10 notorious leaders that are teaching us these things.
Yeah, yeah. So along those same lines, Steve, was there one leader that you researched to like maybe completely change your perspective on what effective leadership is?
Well, actually, there was, but he wasn't in the book. He was he was, I guess, before the book, and
Okay.
that's when I went through my John Maxwell training and
Yeah.
certification. And it came down to a very simple statement that John teaches. He says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And the fastest way to succeed is by helping others succeed. So I kind of try to build that into the book and find people that kind of fit that mold where they were in it not only to succeed, but also to kind of, build their leadership bench strength so that they always had, the next level people coming up that could, fill these positions as they were vacated for a variety of reasons, giving the context of a lot of these being in war. So that was kind of a leading, a light turning on in my mind that those are the kind of leaders I want to learn from.
Yeah. So we've only got about 30 seconds here, but I'm presuming, especially since you learned initially from someone a great leader like John Maxwell, as you were writing the book and researching these 10 notorious leaders, you came up with a lot of common traits. I'm thinking between Maxwell and ironically enough, some of these people did horrible, atrocious things, but uh, did you find some commonalities there?
I did, and it was really surprising. What one really interesting theme that permeated every single one of these leaders that, we all know them all as, brutal and violent and, the bad people throughout history. But every single one of them to a person, their first path was to try to achieve their goals peacefully. And they only resorted to violence when peace failed. So, Attila the Hun and Sun Tzu and Genghis Khan, who would have thought that their first choice would have been to try to negotiate a peaceful, conquer or takeover as opposed to just going in and attacking.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Guys, we got to hit a break here. We're going to come back. Continue talking with Steve. We're going to talk about when leaders can maybe be morally wrong, but strategically brilliant. So come back after the break on Mr. Biz Radio.
If you would like to reach hundreds of thousands of business owners every week, Mr. Biz Radio can help. Our show airs globally 7 days a week for more than 25 hours across several internet radio stations plus 20 plus podcast platforms. Also, video exposure on the new exclusive Mr. Biz Network streaming channel, which gets blasted to 100 plus streaming platforms, and the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, and our 350,000 social media followers multiple times every week. Join Mr. Biz Nation as an advertiser by emailing us at info@MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit GetPulseTools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Check out all three of Mr. Biz's best-selling books at MrBizBooks.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to Mr. Biz Radio with me, Mr. Biz Ken Wentworth. And again, talking this week with Mr. Steve Williams. He is the author of, make sure I get it right, Notorious Leadership Lessons from History's Most Notorious Leaders. You can find that book anywhere you find books. Definitely go check it out. We're going to talk more about the book here, but I want to pay off on the T's I mentioned, Steve. So as you were doing some of this research, when did you find, or did you find, I assume you did, that a leader can be morally wrong, but maybe strategically brilliant? And then, how should business owners care about that distinction?
That's a great question. One of the things that I challenge the reader to do is separate all the bad things these people did and focus on what they can learn and apply to their personal or business situation. Mm-hmm. And it is absolutely possible to learn from, people like Attila the Hun. And yeah, he did a bunch of bad things and he was brutal and he was known as a terrible person, but he had to be doing a lot of things right to be that successful. I mean, having 80,000, one of the 80,000 soldiers in one of the greatest empires in history, he had to be a pretty darn good leader. And that translates to today's management. And some of the lessons in the book, or all the lessons in the book, you could pull right out and take to a Fortune 500 company or a mom and pop shop today and apply those and see immediate success.
I'm sure. And so I'm following up a little bit on what I asked you towards the end of the last segment and what you just answered, Steve. So is there a leadership trait that you saw, maybe even just one or two, that showed up very consistently across these notorious figures, regardless of, time period or even ideology?
Yes, I think one of the biggest takeaways is every single one of these leaders walked the walk. And what I mean by that is they went first. They led by example. They were out in front of the troops. I mean, they weren't leading from the back. You can't lead from the back. People follow great leaders, not great vision. So, the advice to any business owner is, don't ask your folks to do something that you either haven't done or aren't willing to do yourself. And that was a common trait throughout every single one of these people. They had got their hands dirty. They'd worked side by side with their soldiers or their employees, and they had done, everything that they were asking their people to do, and that earns a tremendous amount of respect.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Steve, because I was thinking the same thing. I've also watched documentaries on former mob leaders or mafia leaders, very similar, and it plays into exactly what you just said. I mean, you don't become the head of a mafia family unless you've worked your way up. You're a street soldier, you become a made guy, and you kind of work yourself all the way up to the top. So by the time you get to the top, presumably you've walked the walk, as you said, and people go, "Oh my gosh, like this guy's done it. He's been there, done that," and they have that massive respect for them because they've essentially, in a weird way, worked their way up the mafia ladder to get to the top.
Absolutely. And Al Capone's one of the characters, and yeah, absolutely. He started on the street, he worked his way up, he took over and made strategic moves, and he was not afraid to go out and take care of business himself.
Yeah. So I want to sort of a little bit of the elephant in the room, little tiny elephant, but So I see a lot of these leaders, of course, since they're notorious leaders, they used fear. You led through fear. Have you found in your vast experience in the business world, as well as the research you've done, is it ever an effective leadership tool, or is it always toxic?
I think it's always toxic.
Okay.
I'll take the example of Sonny Barger. He ran the Hells Angels for over 50 years, and as strange as this sounds, given the outlaw motorcycle club environment, Sonny knew that leading this toughest group of men in the world through fear would only work in the short term, right? Fear only works until somebody else comes along that people are more afraid of. And you don't get buy-in, you don't get, people, wanting to follow you and you talk about charisma, right? They follow the leader, not the vision. So one of the things that Sonny came, one of his lessons is, he gave his people the, I guess, permission to, in his words, screw up as long as they learned from it. So he would invite constructive dissent. He would take, from his leadership team in the motorcycle world, they all had a voice at the table, and he would listen to them. He could certainly run it like a tyrant, but he would listen to them, and they always made better decisions that way.
Yeah, I love that. So I worked at JP Morgan for a long time and still have a lot of admiration for their CEO, Jamie Dimon. And one of the things that I've learned from him right after he started and he took over is he said, I want leaders underneath me who ask for forgiveness, not permission,
Yeah.
which goes right along with what you're talking about, Steve. Someone who says, I got the chutzpah that I can make a decision and I don't have to go ask dad every time. Do you mind if I do this? Right? Just go do it. Like use your own intellect, use your own experience. You're going to screw up sometimes. That's okay. You're going to learn from it, and if all you're doing is going to your leader all the time, your manager, your boss, whatever, and asking for permission, that's like, well, at some point I can just replace you. Like I can just have your people come to me. Like I can just cut that layer out, right? So, he instilled that. But I'm glad you brought up charisma, Steve. I wanted to touch on that a little bit. How can leaders leverage that charisma without it crossing over into what a lot of people would term as manipulation?
And that's a great point. And charisma is a key to leadership, right? I mean, some people are born very charismatic. It's not, what I say is, being a great leader is a teachable skill set. You don't have to be born a great leader, but some people are born extremely charismatic. And the ones that aren't, you can improve your level of charisma by training and learning and leading and being in situations and seeing how people react to it. So it's a big part of being an effective leader. I think that where you have to be careful is keeping their focus on influencing others by helping them become successful and grow versus, people are smart. Employees are smart. They know when they're being used. And, when crossing the line from charismatic to manipulating, you're not doing that in the vacuum. The people you're trying to lead can see that. So, either they get called out on it or they leave the company and go someplace else. So people have to be very, very aware that that's a fine line. Being able to motivate people because they want to follow you into people following you because you make them follow you.
Yeah. I love what you said too about helping others be successful. I learned that thankfully. I had some good mentors, and I learned that early on when I started to manage folks in my corporate career of how important it is and how much different you feel when you have a leader who is invested in your success. And success is different for every single person, right? One person might say, "Hey, man, I just want to get to a certain level. I want to work my 9 to 5, and I want to go home, and I don't want to work." And that's their level of success. Someone else says, "Gosh, I want to be a CEO someday," right? And so being able to recognize that, and honestly, the way I sort of developed some of my leadership was people that I worked for in the past, and I looked at what did I not like about how they led me, and what did I love about how they led me, right? And so throw out the crappy stuff and keep the good
Right.
stuff. And it was like an absolute game changer for me once I got, especially even bigger and bigger teams. Guys, we're going to hit a break here. Continue talking with Steve. We're going to talk about some of the historical leaders that maybe modern CEOs unknowingly resemble, and what if that should concern us.
How would you like to have direct access to Mr. Biz to help you run your business more profitably and more efficiently? At MrBizSolutions.com, you get live access to not only Mr. Biz, but also several of his hand-picked and trusted business experts, each with 20 plus years of experience to help you optimally manage and grow your business. That's just the start of where Mr. Biz Solutions begins. Learn more at MrBizSolutions.com. That's MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit GetPulseTools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Got a question for Mr. Biz you want answered on air? Email it to info@MrBizSolutions.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show again, talking with Steve Williams this week. Check out his book. It is Notorious Leadership Lessons from History's Most Notorious Leaders. A lot of stuff to cover here. We only got one segment left, but I want to pay off on what I mentioned right before the break there. Is there a historical leader that you see in your research, Steve, that maybe modern CEOs are kind of emulating and they resemble a bit, but they don't really realize it? And should that be a concern?
I would reframe that as modern successful CEOs.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would posit that the most successful ones right now have a little bit of every single one of the 10 characters in the book in them, right? I mean, we're talking about mentoring and building bench strength and surrounding yourself with good people that'll challenge you and not just, agree and get along. People that are being very decisive in their actions and not overthinking things. I think the modern successful CEO, like most things, we do a lot of these things and may not recognize them for what they are. They're going to read the book and say, you know what, I kind of do that, or I could do that a little bit better, but at least I'm doing a little bit of that. So I think that almost, to a person in the book, to a lesson in the book, there's a little bit of all of them in anybody that's successful today. There's things that, the most successful CEO can learn from the book, and there's things that somebody that just got their first promotion or they want to be a leader can certainly get them on the right journey. So I think there's stuff in there for everybody, and it's kind of a non-answer, but there's no one single person, because everybody I chose are offering positive lessons on leadership, and if you're successful, you've got to be doing some of the stuff already.
So we talked a little bit about charisma. Obviously, ego can kind of go a little bit hand in hand with that. So in your research, Steve, I'm sure you've seen this, because a lot of pretty much every one of these leaders that you profile in the book met maybe not such a great, untimely demise. And along those lines, how did you see that, like, ego and maybe even unchecked power with some of these guys, right? How does that quietly destroy a leader, even maybe when seemingly they're winning?
Absolutely. There's a quote that I firmly believe in that goes something like, all power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I believe in that. I mean, ego and unchecked power oftentimes leads to greed and putting your personal agenda over what's best for the company or your organization or whatever group you're leading. And, just without getting political, look at our politicians. I mean, they get into politics earning, 5 or low six-figure, salaries, and they leave multimillionaires. I mean, corruption is all around us. The news has always been filled with business examples like Enron and Tyco and Lehman Brothers, where somebody gets to a point where they think they're above the law, they're above the rules, they don't apply to them anymore. When we have people making rules that you and I have to live by, but they don't, then power's gotten too high and they've got too much of it. And it's always putting themselves above the people that they're there to lead for.
And I feel like, especially, it seems like, and maybe not in all cases, but I love watching mafia movies, not only the documentaries, but actually the fiction stories as well. And it seems like, again, those are embellished, I'm sure, and over dramatized to some extent, but it seems like a lot of times, especially, and I'm just speaking because I know it probably the most, is it's a lot of that ego and unchecked power. Is you, as we mentioned earlier, you start as a street soldier and you work your way up and you finally get to be in a position of power, maybe leading a mafia family, massive, position over likely a multi-billion dollar enterprise, right? And no one can question you, right? You're
Right.
leading with and those guys are leading with fear in a lot of cases. I'm sure the ego gets bigger and bigger. Everyone's kissing their butts, right? Everyone, right? Everyone wants to be around the boss, and everyone wants to be connected to the boss, and so I would presume, especially at least on that side of things, and maybe several of the other leaders in your book had some of that going on with the unchecked power and all that kind of stuff. So that leads me to my next question: is if there's maybe even one cautionary lesson that you think every business owner should probably learn from these notorious leaders, what would you say that would be, Steve?
Well, I think acknowledging the fact that great leaders know they don't have all the answers, right? They
Yeah,
can't
love that.
make every decision on their own. They need to surround themselves with people. Sonny talked about constructive dissent. He wanted people to push back when they disagree with him. So many of our current poor leaderships, they're threatened by surrounding themselves with people because they're afraid of losing their job to them, right? My philosophy has always been I want to hire people smarter than me every
Yep.
chance I can get. I want them to want my job because for them to get my job, that hopefully means I'm moving up the ladder, right? I mean, insecure leaders have the opposite effect. So surround yourself with people that challenge you. Groupthink, everybody on the same page, that makes us dumber while constructive consent makes us smarter. So that would be my advice.
Okay. So that leads me to another thing. So in my opinion, at least, I get the collaborative piece of leadership, right? And I think it's extremely important. At the same time, I think like any other positive characteristic, if it's emphasized too much or is too strong, becomes a negative. In that, if I'm a leader and I don't make any decisions on my own, I have to have my 8 direct reports come in and have them weigh in. And if 6 of them like it, then I go with that. And every single time, it's almost like I'm never having the cojones to make my own decision. I need all of these guys. And I think that, you tell me, but I think that would erode the respect that your direct reports or whatever it might be. They say, gosh, we're kind of doing this guy's job for him. Is that something you would agree with?
I would absolutely. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is the lesson about situational leadership, right? Adjusting your leadership style to fit the situation. And
Yes.
there was, a number of leaders in the book that were masters at it, right? We get new information and we have to change a plan. We got to pivot. What we thought we were going to do isn't working. We got to do something different. Same thing goes for, this type of leadership, right? Sonny Barger, we talked about him. Yeah, he listened to his leadership team, but he had the final say. I mean,
Hmm.
he would take all that input and collectively, if he thought that the group had come up with a better solution than he did, then he'd go with it. But if he disagreed, strongly that, what, I'm just going to put my hand down and say, nope, we're going with my way. You got to be able to do that. You've got to adjust your leadership style. And you're right. If people start to see that, collaboration, we're doing my boss's job for them, that can certainly be destructive. And people need to be able to adjust to the situation. Sometimes a collaboration is, I mean, it depends on, military, you've got to be extremely autocratic, right? You give an order, you got to be followed. Working with a group of engineers, you've got to get them to buy into it and be a part of it and have skin in the game. So if you switch those leadership styles, it'd be a disaster, but they work within those contexts. You have to be able to adjust to the situation.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think it's extremely important because, life, business, it ebbs and flows so much. I think on the flip side of the whole collaborative thing is I've seen this too with colleagues during my corporate career, where they bring together people and say, what do you guys think? And then they never take their advice. And so the opposite happens. People go, why even bother? Right? They get frustrated. Like, you don't value our feedback. You're just basically checking a box to do that. And I'm sure that's frustrating for people, and erodes that, that leadership as well. Guys, we're out of time here. Steve, I really appreciate you coming on. Fascinating conversation.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. I'd love to come back. I think you're doing a great service to all your listeners.
I appreciate that, Steve. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And don't forget, as always, cash flow is king.
To become part of Mr. Biz Nation, follow him on all social media platforms, or never miss a show by going to MrBizRadio.com. If you prefer free video content, visit the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, or check out his streaming channel, which is available on 100+ streaming platforms at MrBizNetwork.com.